Okay, I think we're all recording. Yeah.
We are recording.
Yeah, we're good.
You're live with the Saint and Greavesy show.
Goodness, that takes me back. So, that's
Right, first question.
Right, okay, first question is, when did you start reading Commando?
Sometime in the 1960s. I am not entirely sure when. Probably about the mid-1960s. Probably 1966 to avoid watching the football. Yourself?
It would be, I'm racking my brains, I'm going to say late 70s to maybe early 80s, but probably more like the late 70s. So there is a question that's a bit later on that says, do you have a family connection? Was it passed down from an older relative?
Well, not in my case, because, or if it is, it's lost in the mist of time. But no, I honestly don't think so. I don't recall anybody in my family reading comics as such. So no, probably not.
For me, it was my dad. My dad read comics, and they used to get delivered every Saturday or whenever, and it would be a rush to see who could read them first. But he never got Commando delivered, but Commando was the book that we would get when we went on holiday. If we were going on a bus or a train or whatever, he'd pick up a couple of Commandos at the train station or service station, and that would be for the holidays.
Right, that's interesting, because we used to get Sunday papers delivered, and the comics came with the Sunday papers. But like you, it was never Commando.
Yeah.
So my Commando purchasing was a bit sporadic, which is fine because they're all self-contained and everything.
Yeah, that was kind of for me as well. It would just be those occasional copies of...
Exactly.
And they became a holiday thing for me.
Yeah.
And even late, years later, I would do the same and go buy a couple of Commandos at the service station.
I think, I could be wrong here, but my dad, after work on a Friday, he would go into Broughty Ferry, which is the closest shops to us, and he would get money from the bank. He always got money from the bank on a Friday. He would buy fish suppers for the family or whatever, and he also used to come back with 2 or 3 Commandos. So I probably got more than just the holiday stuff, but and it wasn't every week he would come back with Commandos, but that's when he would come back.
Oh, I see. So, do you remember your first issue?
Well, I think I do. I think it was Bomber's Moon, but it may not have been called that. And I've just been through my box of old goodies and I can't find it, so maybe not. But I have the idea that it was about Lancasters in the Far East. But so I'll let somebody else who knows the back catalogue better go through that.
Well, I've no idea what my first issue was. I mean, I'm not even sure what year it was. So yeah, it's not one I can certainly answer. But do you have a favourite issue?
This is impossible. There's so many of them, and I suppose there are some that stick in your mind. But whether they're favourites, I do remember liking The Four Scars. That was a good one. And there's another one called Lone Eagle. Now, are they my favourites? I don't know, but I remember them very well because I read them so often. Because I would read and reread them. You'd be the same? Tough one. Again, first issue that you really liked. I quite like the ongoing kind of characters. So I quite like the Ramsay's Raiders. I like it because you revisit them, and you kind of get to know the characters over a long period of time. So I quite like them. I think the ones that stand out for me most are the ones where there's an unusual weapon of war in it. The flying flea or fighting flea, that kind of thing. Yeah. Where there's a... Yeah, well, that reminds me. There's one called Desert Monster, where it's an oldie and it's been reprinted at least twice, where this odd group of guys end up in a desert scrapyard and they build this 6-sided tank monster thing. I remember reading that one loads of times. I really liked that one as well. But I don't know if say that's a favourite because I've got so many that I like.
That's the same for me. What is it about Commando that you love?
Oh, goodness. I think it's the fact
early doors anyway, it was the fact that the stories were self-contained, and there was so much character development. You know, you really got to like the characters because they had 135, 140 frames to develop these people. Whereas the compared to the episodic 3 pages, maybe 4 in the comics at the time, things like Victor and what have you, didn't appeal so much. So I think it's something to do with that. I think it's to do with the plotting and the characters.
Yeah, I would agree that having a self-contained story is a good thing. Certainly where I lived, it was hard to get comics. So, you know, keeping up with a weekly or monthly comic or whatever was just impossible to do. But you could just pick up Commando and there it is. That's the whole story right there.
And even the latter episodic ones that we've done, they're a complete story in themselves, even though there's more to come, but the whole thing's resolved.
Yeah. And what makes a great issue of Commando?
Gosh, if I knew that, they'd all be great, you know.
If we knew that, wouldn't be pitching lots of different story ideas and racking our brains.
It's a wee bit. It goes beyond science. There's a wee sprinkling of magic. Sometimes comes in there. It could be the script, it could be the art, but it could be a combination of both. And I think it's when all the stars align.
Yeah.
You know, when everything is just right. Now, you don't necessarily know that when you're starting out. It's just all of a sudden everything comes together and you go, yeah, that worked out really well. I'll have to make the next one as good. And
great issue. Again, kind of like what my favourite issues were. You know, something a bit sort of unusual about it.
Yeah.
I like something that I didn't know about. You know, if it's based on fact, but I didn't know about that particular, you know, wartime mission or aircraft or something. I quite like that about it. But it's a tough one to really answer, I think. I think the next question's quite a tough one as well. Favourite cover of all time?
I could probably narrow it down to about 500. Thing is, when I was working there in the editor's seat, your favourite story was always the next one that came in, which sounds a bit bizarre, because you never really knew what was going to come through the door. That was part of the joy of it. And it was the same with the covers, because you could give an artist a brief and say roughly what you wanted, and they would do something that you had never envisioned, because you're not an artist. Well, I'm not an artist. You obviously are. But right, there's one. I'll just pick out this one cover because I really liked it. It was one of the last ones that Jose Maria Jorge did, and it's the one over the Forth Bridge. Because I sent him the world's worst rough.
Oh, I've seen that rough.
Yes, because obviously he was in Argentina and I was in Dundee, and I sent him the world's worst rough, and he came up with a cover that exceeded my imagination, my expectations, everything. So I'll just say that was my favourite cover. Whether it's the best Commando cover ever or whatever, that's the cover.
I know the one you mean.
Because the rough is appalling.
Living next to the Forth Bridge, I know it, and it's got a Junkers 88 flying.
That's it.
Straight out at you. That is a good cover. And certainly one that sticks in my memory as well. I have looked through Commandos for references of the Forth Bridge before.
It's amazing how often it appears.
And in different countries as well. Yes. It's amazing. Yeah, I even managed to write it into one of my scripts recently. Okay, so what's next? What's your favourite issue that you've worked on? Now you've worked on it in lots of different ways.
Because I've sub-edited them, which is the sort of granular level of changing words and making sure things work and seeing it through. And then I've edited them, which is an overview, and then obviously I've written them. I'm going to say The Last Nazis, which was illustrated by Gordon Livingston, who also did the cover, because I wrote it, and it was the first one that I'd actually written, because I was working in the office at the time, and I would just say that because it was the whole novelty of the whole experience, and the fact that it was Gordon. because Gordon was a joy to work with, absolute joy. Him and Ian Kennedy, okay.
Wow.
But never put them in the same room together. They're absolutely hilarious, the pair of them.
Oh boy. Yeah. There must have been some days. My favourite issue I worked on, I don't know, the last one that I did, probably.
Well,
it's kind of,
yeah.
I enjoyed
Yeah.
doing that part. Which was, well, what was the last one that was out was Dead Man's Chest. And it was quite nice to find out when it came out that the cover was by Graham Neil Reid, who just lives a couple of streets away from me. So it was quite nice.
Well, I didn't get to read that one because when I got to the shop, it was all sold out.
Well, yeah.
None of the others.
And it was sold out in my local shop as well. And I have only one or two copies of it, my subscription copy and one other one that I found somewhere. But yeah, probably just the last one that I worked on.
And possibly, should we say, the next one?
Well, the
You know,
next one.
Because if you're involved in, as I now am, writing them, that's exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
Absolutely.
It's completely different
Yeah.
from the way it was before.
So we've got questions about kind of preferred sort of subjects, land, sea or air. Do you like, a particular setting or period?
I always liked air stories, just because I liked aeroplanes, and as well as liking war stories. So anything with aeroplanes in it doesn't really matter where it is, doesn't matter when it is. I'm not a huge fan of science fiction, but anything from 1900 to now, and especially if we've had a few over the piece where they mix up periods, so you'll get First World War fighters appearing in the Second World War, or stuff like that. I'm struggling to remember what it is, but I seem to remember Alan Hebden coming up with this amazing premise that a wartime Lancaster helped stop a war in the 1980s or 90s because all the modern fighters their electronics had been scrambled by an EMP, massive pulse. So that sort of thing, yeah. But I do like aeroplanes.
Yeah, I went through a phase of just reading the aircraft ones, but I've never. Well, I've pitched a one aircraft one, but it's the only rejection I've had has been an aircraft one. So all my other stuff's been land based. Oh no, I did a sea story. It's not out yet, but it was the end of the year, I think. So I have got a sea story coming out. But I think I like land stories better because they're much more up close and with the enemy, and whereas you've got that distance. It's two stories you're telling when you're telling an aircraft story often.
MTV stories are good as well.
MTV?
Motor torpedo boats.
Oh yes.
Yeah, because they're like planes at sea.
Yeah, and well, I suppose. Yeah, and actually, there is one appears a lot in that sea story I wrote.
Oh, well, good. I'll look forward to this.
Okay. Here's one. Which aircraft do you prefer, Spitfire or Hurricane?
Bristol Bullfighter. The Hurricane. I'm a Hurricane man. Yeah, I always.
No, I've got a Spitfire on me here.
No, I always liked the Hurricane. The Spitfire is probably the more modern, more advanced aircraft and whatnot, and it was developed, but I've always been a Hurricane fan.
Yeah, I don't know if Ian Kennedy's doing a video, but his answer might be interesting, and I think I will tell you the story. So it was 2 or 3 years ago, and I was at a comic convention, and I was doing a Q&A session with Ian, and one of the things that we did was an aircraft identification, Ian versus the audience. So I would hold up a silhouette of an aircraft, and the audience would guess. Ian would write down his answer, and the audience would guess what it was. And anyway, when it was either a Spitfire or a Hurricane. Ian got it right, and the audience didn't get it right. And I turned to Ian and I said, "So what is the difference between a Hurricane and a Spitfire?" And Ian went, "Well, Colin, a Hurricane is a wonderful aircraft, while a Spitfire is just a pretty thing. And yeah, entertain the audience, shall we say?
Yeah.
Okay, what's next? Oh, what would you like to see Commando do in the next 60 years?
Heavens. I said this to you earlier, live long and prosper. I would like Commando to continue. I would like it to continue to be relevant, because it does shine a light on things that might not otherwise be illuminated. And also, I mean, it's Britain's last surviving war comic, and even if it never changed at all after that, it's surely worth preserving for that. But no, I think, because if you look back over the 60 years of Commando, it has changed over the piece. I hope it continues to change, and it continues to be popular when people see its merits. I mean, there's lots of things that could be done off it, but I would, the core Commando, I think I would. Yeah, just keep it the same, but change it.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd quite like it to remain as it is. I suppose one thing that might change is the eras might shift forward a wee bit.
Yeah.
So, you know, we kind of see some stories up to the 80s, maybe early 90s. But that'll maybe move to more modern conflicts as things move on. Yeah. What would you tell someone who has never read Commando?
There are people who've never read Commando.
I believe so. I don't know any.
Well, I suppose it would depend on who they were and what their background was. But if it was a youngster, I would just say, you know, get past the war stuff. You know, put that to one side, because that's very important to the stories. But it's not actually the nub of the stories. The nub of the stories are the characters. You're reading about people and people's interactions with one another, and don't get too hung up on tanks and planes and bombs. Look at what the people are doing.
Yeah, they're still very human stories.
Exactly, and they're all self-contained, as we've said before.
Yeah.
Incredibly good value, and some of them written by really great people.
Yeah, one or two.
What about you? What's your advice to the new reader?
Pick one up and just read it and see what you like about it. You know, and everyone's so different that you could pick up, you know, 3 and completely different stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, give it a try, and like you say, it's that self-contained story. They're going to get a whole story. They're not going to have to go and look for another copy to end the story or follow a character.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a really good thing about it.
Could also say, just pick it up. Colin will pay for it.
They can maybe get one for cheap out of my back catalogue. Right, here's a weird one. If there was a Commando about you, what would the title be?
Oh goodness. The botanist who went to war.
The botanist?
Yeah, that was my original qualification.
Goodness.
What about you?
I don't know. War artist or something, or artist at war. There's probably been one. I don't know if there has. Certainly ones about photographers. I think there's stories about those, and maybe journalists, but yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, difficult one that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So here's another equally difficult one. What would your agent codename be? You're dropped in behind enemy lines and you've got to contact folk on the wireless. What's your secret codename?
Oh heavens. Well, I mean, my own name would be fine, because it's so difficult to spell if you're not Scottish.
Oh, indeed, yeah.
I don't know. Joe Norton.
Joe Norton.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've got a motorbike, which is a Norton Commando.
Say, if anybody knows Calum, he's into his bikes, so we can see that reference. I'm not sure. Agent codename. Nah, I don't know. It'd probably just be a number.
I was going to say, is there not some way you can work Adobe into that? Because
I've done lots of work with
yeah.
quite possibly. It's a secret. It's a secret code name. I'm not
Oh,
gonna tell
well,
you. I'm not going to tell you what
Maybe
it is.
maybe that was just a smoke screen I put up there.
Oh,
So,
maybe, yeah. Okay, here's our last question, right? So, what would be your dream cast for a Commando film?
Well, if you could just photocopy the cast list for Kelly's Heroes, that would do me fine. And probably the plot as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, there isn't a duffer in that one. They're all good.
Ah, solid
Good,
cast,
solid
yeah.
characters. I mean, I know there are much younger and you know, actors who could do a number, but I just thought that was such a good film, such a good ensemble cast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I did actually, in a recent script, put details of the three main characters as just real actors, all dead actors now. But the story is about three German officers, and I cast them as Humphrey Bogart, Sidney Greenstreet, and Peter Lorre.
Oh right,
And
Maltese Falcon.
I kind of pictured it as a film noir style, and so I'm intrigued to see which artist gets that, and if they take that idea on board.
That's a strong cast. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I like that.
And
But I still stick with Kelly's Heroes like that.
And we've certainly seen some characters that look maybe reminiscent of
Oh yes,
Real.
yeah.
real people. Haven't
You
they?
can see where, particularly cover artists, have drawn from actors, particularly. If you know where to look, you can spot famous actors on the covers of Commando heavily disguised. I mean, I think I said to you earlier, Oliver Reed's there, Dirk Bogarde, they're Legion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Charles Bronson makes an appearance in one of the covers of one of my stories, and in my first story, and I kind of intentionally did it, but I didn't write it in the script. But Manuel Bennett drew one of the characters, and he looks a bit like Windsor Davies, you know.
Oh yes,
His character, Sergeant Major Williams.
yes.
Shut up. So, and lots of people spotted that reference there. He's got the moustache.
Thanks.
Yeah. So there you go.
Is that everything?
I think we're done.
Cheers. Yes, cheers.